Alrighty. Hello and welcome, guys. No special intro night or anything, kind of just playing this last second with how poorly the game went. Putting a very massive understatement on that. But we're just going to talk about this performance, going to let people vent, and just generally talk about where the team is. Because it's not a good situation, right? And I don't think anything I can really say can even put into words how god awful of a football team has been assembled in Jacksonville. Now, overreactions, to be fair, right? Like, it's possible. We just lost the game. It was, I don't even remember what the score was, 47-10. Technically, maybe they're still playing it out at this point. I guess they are, according to this. Who cares? I mean, it's 47-10. But, yeah, wild, terrible performance by Jacksonville. And just a game where, I mean, they didn't even put the punter on the field all the way to, gosh, the fourth quarter, I think it was. Just crazy stuff. Mr. Dolphin, thank you for joining the channel membership. Appreciate it. If you guys got any questions, anything you want to talk about, throw it into the chat for sure. Apologize, and we'll talk about it. But it's going to be a very loose episode. We'll probably talk about like individual performances, kind of what the team does. And we'll probably talk about some firings that will come eventually. Probably not tomorrow, but will probably come eventually. And yeah, worst OT trio in the league. I mean, it feels like it. Anton Harrison looks like a shell of his former self, if that. I don't even know if that's fair to say. Might be giving him too much credit at that point. You got Cam Robinson, who every time I've seen him, just getting beat, constantly getting beat. Gets beat inside as well, which is even worse. And Walker Little comes out on the field. He's like, okay, time to false start twice in a row. You know, just unbelievably, laughably bad performances by these players, I think, are a testament to how bad this coaching staff has been. We got the regulars saying Lawrence is no elite quarterback. They were stupid to extend him a year earlier. Peterson and Balky are history. And honestly, I don't even disagree with that take. Even if it's on the nose, I can't disagree with it because he is not an elite quarterback. He played like an elite quarterback for half a year. That's where we are right now, right? Not really much else than that. Oh, sorry. Let me go to this screen share. It's a little bit better. But that's reality. Like, first year, he was bad. Urban Meyer was the excuse. Second year, first half of the year was bad. Urban Meyer was the excuse for that too. Played well in 2022, last half of the year. Played more than well, actually. I'll give him his credit. He was arguably the best quarterback in the league. 2023, didn't do a whole lot. Didn't really have a great year. Even before the injury, I think he had one good game that was impressive. And this year, just, it's the same thing, right? Like, we're in year 4. It's not about what you are as a prospect anymore. It's about what are you as a player? What are you in the NFL? Because that's what you got to get paid for. You're not paying someone for what you hope they are. You're paying them for what they're going to be. And that's not what the Jaguars paid him for. They paid him for what they want him to be. And I had a huge problem with the extension at the time. I didn't talk about it too hard on this channel because I knew people wouldn't take it well, and I didn't want to be completely a Debbie Downer. But he simply, at that point, had not earned it. And we're talking about a coaching staff and a front office that had to succeed at that time. If they fail, which they have, very clearly, is there a punishment for them for extending Trevor Lawrence? Is there? Like, genuine question. There's not, right? Because if Trevor Lawrence didn't work out, which I'm not saying he hasn't, I'm not even saying this is all his fault, right? But simply put, he's not worth $55 million a year right now. I think that's almost impossible to argue against at this point. For the coach and the front office, there was no reason not to extend him because they have every incentive to do it. And they're going to tell the owner what he wants to hear, which is that this is the best football team of all time and all this stuff. That's not true. Not even close to true. We'll have to see if this would even beat the 2021 squad. More talented, but might be more dead inside too. But just, yeah, I have my problems with it too. I think it was too early to extend him, and I think that it was something where they needed to make it pretty clear, like, you want to get paid top of the market, take us to the playoffs again. You know, show that you're the guy Not that we don't believe you're going to be that, but you got to show that. We can't just give out the biggest contract in NFL history willy-nilly. But they did, and you got to ride it out now. You don't have a choice. You got like 4 years of this. No matter what, I still would say it's more likely than not that Lawrence works out, but questions, right? Huge questions about that. It doesn't look good so far, but everyone's going to also talk about how bad the team is around him, which is very fair to say. And what this all turns into is, look at what this person did, and look at what that person did. And everyone's got the different scapegoat, and we want to blame it on one person, but the reality is that this team is a disaster. Not just one person, this team, this 53-man roster, this front office, this coaching staff, not every single person, but a hell of a lot of them. It's a mess. Mr. Dolphin says, I don't understand how we go from the end of the 2022 season to now this. It should be studied and made a documentary of. I agree. It's crazy because this team, what they did in 2023 was essentially an undoing of what they did in 2022. I felt like this team after 2022 had broken a lot of curses, if you believe in curses, right? I'm kind of using the phrase lightly here. But I thought that they were over the Titans. I thought that they were a contender. I thought they learned how to win in crucial moments, and they did the exact opposite of it in 2023. And then 2024, it's the same thing. And you ask yourself, why did we let these people hold the keys again? Now, I will say, I wouldn't have fired Doug Peterson this offseason. I would have fired Trent Baalke for sure. But I think with Doug, it was kind of a situation where, okay, you still had the miraculous playoff run. You had one bad year here. We can blame this on some things, but you're only going to get another season, right? And at the same time, you got to consider what candidates are out there. Well, there really wasn't a whole lot this last offseason. Maybe that'll change in a couple years when we look back at it. But as of now, it doesn't look great. And so I think they made the right decision to keep Doug for now, but we're at a point now where it's like, okay, this isn't working out. You're not the guy, right? So Deadly says Baalke needs to go. Doug will be gone end of the year. He isn't coaching up the team and has lost the team. I agree, and I think it's just a question of when do these people get fired. I don't know, honestly. But the way they're performing right now, which is hard to believe with change, might be gone tomorrow. I mean, it's possible. I don't want to tell you all that's going to happen, but it's possible. With how bad this team was tonight, I had low expectations for this team. Anyone who followed me this offseason knew that. I was the Debbie Downer of the Jaguars community. The one that was telling you they might not be as good as what we're hoping they are. And my expectations were too high for this team. I still thought they'd at least play with us and get to maybe like 8-9 at worst. They're not even going to come close to 8-9. I don't see how they get a win next week. I think the Colts streak of beating them at home will probably die. I don't know how this works, right? I'm going to have to probably skip through some of these comments just because we've got a lot of people in here and I'm taking a lot of time with each one. Yeah, game was definitely an embarrassment, Jay. Absolutely agree there. And talking about the deals that have been paid out, it's frustrating to me that we let lame ducks sign so many deals with players and determine the future of this team. This should have been an off-season to reset. This should not have been off-season to go all in with a front. I think we might be disconnected there. Let me know if you can hear me again. I think we got disconnected. But I'll keep talking on. Made a lot of decisions, though. Right? Made a lot of big contracts. I don't disagree with all of them, but a lot of money was paid out by this front office. And the results have not even been close to what they should have been. We went to battle with an AFC South that, yeah, most of them have failed. The Titans have failed. The Colts have failed. It would appear so far, right? Good, you guys can hear me. That's good. But we went in with half the resources of these teams thinking we were going to win. It was never going to happen. And we put a person in charge that was incompetent, that has no checks on him, and this has simply just been an organization that's allowed mediocrity and welcomed it over and over. And something has to change, right? It's frustrating. Philadelphia was right. I admit it. I agree, Josh. It was hard to maybe agree with originally, but It's the same thing, right? I think the only difference in Philadelphia, talking about Doug Peterson, of course, was that they were competitive enough early on for him to win, right? And then things went south, and they weren't able to call out the problems because he's buddy-buddy with Press Taylor, and he got fighting with the GM and all this stuff. And I'm not saying the GM's out of it. He's had problems with about everyone he's been with. So it's not like this is just a Doug problem. This is a problem on a lot of people. Yeah, Shaw is too much of a sissy and make changes when they need to be. He waits until now when the ship has been sunk. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point he has to make changes, though. Like, I don't think there's any way that you can ignore this. And I'm not saying that as in tomorrow. It may not be the best thing to do it tomorrow. It's debatable. But I don't know. I don't want to die on that hill, to be fair. But I think he has to make changes, right? You cannot keep these people. You set the highest expectations this organization has ever had, and they have performed to the lowest possible outcome that they ever could have. If he's fired people in the past, there's no way he can't fire these people. And it's done. I don't know how you buy the locker room back here. I don't see how that's possible. And I would love to watch press conferences from the end of this game. I don't think I'll be able to talk about them live on here. Let me see. I'm going to turn on my TV here, see if I can get this to where I can hear it. Because I know Doug will probably speak soon. But yeah, it's going to be fun to listen to these press conferences. I can't wait for that. We need to spend the entire 2025 draft on the O-line. Maybe. Now, I will say, a lot of people talking about the top offensive line prospects in really good regard. I wouldn't take one of those guys. I'm not sold on them. I don't think Will Campbell or Calvin Banks Jr. is as good as they would appear right now, or as people talk about them, but I think there needs to be a lot of investments made by this team. And I think they're probably, with where they're going to be picking, if nothing changes, probably going to have to pick a cornerback, it would appear. There's a lot of great players at that position. Someone's going to be there. They might be the first overall pick for all we know right now. But yeah, offensive line has to be rebuilt. I mean, what pieces do you have for the long term? What player can you confidently say right now, after these 3 games, is going to be here for the long term? That is a foundational piece of this organization. We used to have one. His name was Anton Harrison. Maybe things change there over the course of the year, but he's a part of the problem. He is a huge part of the problem for this team. You're going to see it when we see those PFF grades tomorrow, so I'll make sure to point him out, but we'll look at him here really quick, just how he's performed this year. God awful. I can't type, apparently. Here we go. And he didn't get graded out well like last year. You can see he was down at like a 60 for pass blocking, 45 for run blocking. Average at best. But this year has been disgusting. And I guess they've already got grades in. Okay, well actually we get to take a look at this. But yeah, that's probably a higher grade than he deserved. I'll actually take a look at that all right now in that case. So after tonight, just notes on the offensive line. 27th pass blocking. That is going down. 25th in run blocking. 25th in run blocking. Consistently poor play from this offensive line. We have seen this over and over and over and over. I guess maybe we could only see Anton Harrison's there. It's kind of confusing. But I'll get back to the chat here for a second. What do you think we hire Belichick during the season? Do I think we'll hire him? I think it's possible. I could see Shad getting swindled by him, but I would sure as hell not hire Belichick. I'll be honest. I think this team needs a long-term solution. And to me, it's been very simple. I think you look back at where the rebuild really started with getting our quarterback and compare it to the Lions and what they've done. The Lions have built things right. They may not be a perfect team, but they are a very strong competitor, and they might be the Super Bowl champion at the end of this year. Might. We don't know, but they're a really good team. They built things slowly. They built things the right way. They made strong investments. They made good decisions. And they brought in people who changed the culture. And they didn't accept mediocrity, right? And we've seen this now for what is going into its 4th year, go from being a winless team that won late in the season to 9-8, almost making the playoffs if it wasn't for the outcome of a different match in Week 18, to all of a sudden they almost make the Super Bowl. The Detroit Lions. We all know the history of the Lions. We all know the bad things that have been said about them over time. To me, if you got Ben Johnson there and Ray Agnew, who not a lot of people know who Ray Agnew is because he's the assistant GM, but someone who has been a huge part of the decisions being made there, they know how to change a culture. That's who I'm targeting. It's very simple to me in that regard. Not that no one else will be right. Not that there's just one option. But I think that's the way I would go. With Belichick, I think at the end of the day, Shad would give him too much power. I don't trust him to say you're just going to be a head coach. And even if he's just a head coach, we need an offensive mind that's going to fix the $55 million quarterback. It's also going to fix some of the air players on offense too who are struggling, and the offensive line. So I don't really trust Belichick for that. I think it's a short-term solution too. It's not for long-term success. He's like 72 years old at this point. How much longer is he going to coach? I think it's fair to ask. So I would not be in on Belichick, but I could absolutely see it happening. And if it does, God rest my soul, I am going to be having a really hard time getting invested in this team for you guys. How could Khan have been sold such a load of BS to have said this is the best Jaguars team ever? Well, the regulator, sometimes people want to believe what they want to believe, right? And we do that as fans. Like, we all wanted to believe that this was truly one of the best Jaguars teams of all time. We all want to, whether or not we did. But a lot of people bought into this, right? They bought into this team and believed they were going to be really good. They believed they were going to take back the division, that this could be a Super Bowl competitor, and it's not. It's nowhere close. This is right now, definitively, the worst team in the NFL. I don't think it's close. I think you could try to argue the Titans, but I don't think we'd beat them. I'm going to be straight. I don't think we would beat the Titans right now. I don't think there's any team we would beat. I think this team will get blown out by the Panthers, given it's Andy Dalton starting now. But that's what they are at this point. And I think people just buy into things they want to hear. I think for Shad Khan, when the Urban Meyer signing went so poorly and he said that was the guy, it got desperate, right? And he said the same thing about Doug Peterson. What you have to hope is that at this point, for Shad Khan, that he has to realize that he has not been good enough, that he's made poor decisions, that he is not someone who should be determining who's in charge of the football operations, and that he needs help. And I hope he realizes that, because if he cannot do that after this season and how it's gone and how wrong he's been, which he will never be as wrong as he's been now. In his entire time as the owner, I don't know if he can make a statement more wrong. With that, he has to get help. And I hope they take the approach that the Commanders did as you watch them. I don't know if they're winning still. It was 28-20 last time I checked. But as you watch that team start to turn things around, because they actually made smart decisions, because they were looking for help, because they actually got people who knew what they were doing. They brought in championship general managers to help them make the decision on an advisory group. I hope Jacksonville does something like that. And by the way, Commanders would have Ben Johnson if he was actually leaving Detroit. leaving Detroit this last year. So, yeah, and they did win. That's good. Fun team to watch right now, so I'm glad they did. But I think for Jacksonville, like, it's a situation where Shad Khan has to be willing to understand and accept that he has not been good enough and that he needs help. And I will say one thing that people might disagree with right now, but for all the outcomes this season could have had, I think what's happening right now is the second best outcome. The best thing that could have happened for this team was obviously being as good as they were supposed to be and winning a Super Bowl. But this was a season, to me, that was all about getting the answers to your questions. I've said that multiple times this offseason. That's all I've cared about for the 2024 season. I want to know the answers on this front office, this coaching staff. I want to know with Trevor Lawrence what's up. Although I don't know if we'll get an answer there. Because unless he's incredible, you're still going to have the question next year because you're going to be stuck with him next year, even if he's terrible. But we need to get answers. And even though this team is god-awful and one of the worst Jaguars teams ever, it's an answer, right? And that brings change that allows us to actually know there's a problem and to hopefully try to fix it. Because I would so much rather try to fix the problems than say it's okay to be 8-9, 9-8, whatever it may be. And so we needed either a great season or a horrible season, and thank God we're at least getting one of them. It's a shitty situation because, like, for me, I went into tonight almost wanting this team to lose because I don't want them to play with the fans anymore. I don't want them to play with us. I want to know the damn answer, and it feels like the answer's been pretty dang clear. So, it sucks, but this is better for the long run than another year of being okay. And then Shad Khan convincing himself, maybe we'll just give him another chance. Right? This is what we need. If it's not going to be a Super Bowl, it needs to be collapse. Now, we'll talk about players here real quick. Shout out to Travis Etienne getting garbage time points in fantasy because I almost went 1-2 in my league. But again, from Trevor Lawrence, just we talked about this every time we've had a game recap this year. Volume, no volume. Like, I don't know what it is with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, you can get guys like Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield out here who can put up 300 yards in a game almost every other week. Whether or not they do that the other weeks or don't throw a ton of interceptions, I don't get why Trevor Lawrence can't have volume. I don't get why this offense can't have volume, but they're apparently just allergic to it. Doesn't even get 200 yards. And stats on the year, we'll actually look at this real quick. So, this doesn't include the last game. But roughly 560 yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception in 3 games. You're not even getting 200 yards a game. You have 2 touchdowns and 1 pick. It's just like, when does it change, right? You got to ask yourself that question, to be fair. Mac Jones came in too. I think he was the one who fumbled at the end of that game. Travis Etienne, just, man, I mean, he got some yards at the end, but just nothing there. Nothing there consistently. It's not even just the interior of this offensive line, it's the tackles as well. I mean, they're just god-awful. It's embarrassing how little pride that this team has in the trenches. It's why they're losing. It's a huge part of why they're losing. Because if they actually put some damn investments there, they might actually have a chance. But they've skipped those investments every single offseason. Jackson Powers-Johnson could have traded up for him. Osiris Torrance was sitting there in the second round. Now, Torrance hasn't done as well in the NFL, to be fair. You're going to miss on some. But the opportunities have been there. And we've got Anton Harrison, which is cool, although now apparently he sucks. We'll see. But that's where we are. I see Jax Jag says, do you think if Trevor sucks, we'll move on next year? I don't think we can. And I don't think he's that bad to this point where we're like, okay, he's the problem, let's get rid of him. I'm not saying he's good either. But Trevor is locked in with this team. We'll take a look at Spot Rack for this, just to explain this contract. Because you got to keep in mind, we signed this as early as possible. 2 years left on the rookie deal. We guaranteed $142 million. This is your out. You have 5 years. Unless you trade him, which who the hell is going to pay him if he doesn't work out? Fair question. But 5 years of Trevor Lawrence. Pretty much no matter what. You don't have a choice before that. You're basically going to pay him all that money, regardless of whether he's here that entire time. But 5 years is what you're looking at. So, the bet is made. There's no changing that now. I'm kind of shocked. I will say, Tank Bigsby only got 2 carries tonight. He looked good when he got carries. He's looked good all year. He's had something figured out with how to get around this offensive line and their issues. I would probably give him the ball more. Even though I have ETN in fantasy, I would still do that. Christian Kirk, finally got him involved. That's one good thing from tonight. Finally got him involved in the offense, and that should have happened before. Brian Thomas Jr. getting more targets tonight. Some good stuff, but at the same time, you're just not sustaining drives. You're not scoring, and it broke the game open tonight when Buffalo couldn't be stopped on offense. And you get a score that's like 34-3 pretty damn quick. But yeah, I like seeing these guys get more targets. I think that's good. And then obviously, we don't see offensive line here, but they were crap. We pretty much know that. Maybe one guy had a good individual performance we didn't notice, but wasn't a good performance as a unit. Now, getting to the defense, where you see the sack. not one freaking sack by this team. Yeah, Jay Shupp. Our edge rushers have probably been the biggest disappointment to me. Yeah, pretty disappointing. 0 sacks in this game. I don't get it. I just don't. And I would tell you right now, with Trayvon Walker, well, I don't think he's a bad player. To me, it's a situation, and I'm gonna sound crazy for saying this, but at least the whole point of what I'm getting to. With Trayvon Walker, with all the hype about him, with all the things this team has said, he has to be the guy or you don't keep him. That's the way I look at it. Because when you sign that contract to extend him, he's going to ask for a shit ton of money because he's going to tell you, hey, this is what you said about me. This is the guy that I am according to you. Why are you not paying me accordingly? And Trayvon's not that guy. He's not a bad football player, but he is not anywhere near what a first overall pick should be. Nowhere close. That is a miss by this organization. It is arguably a fireable offense. Given the nature of just player value being worth more earlier in contracts, when this team fires people, I would almost trade them off. Actually, I would say right now I probably would. While that value's high, I'd do that. And some people disagree. That's fine. We all have our crazy takes. That's probably one of mine. But I'm not putting up with that. It's disappointing, and I don't think that you think about what he's probably worth right now, which is still a first, in my opinion, even though fans will maybe disagree just based off how poorly the night went. But I think that's worth more than Trayvon Walker. I would take that deal right now. It's like C.J. Henderson, right? You trade him for a third, he's worth nothing, but he still had that value earlier on. Now, not as bad as C.J. Henderson was, not saying that, but kind of the same logic there, right? And they won't do that. That won't happen. But that's where I would be, if I'm going to be honest. But getting back to the players here for a moment. Pass rush, non-existent. Josh Allen had all night to throw. Hit his targets consistently. You see, when you watch the Bills, you watch any other team, they actually make things easy on their quarterback. They actually try to have a semblance of a normal offense. I didn't know you could do that, being a Jaguars fan. But apparently he can. And I don't know, for whatever reason, Jacksonville has no interest in making things easy. They want to make it complicated. They want to make it hard. They want to do crazy concepts with players that aren't good enough to do them. And this is your result. But yeah, I mean, what do I even talk about standing out? I still think the linebackers played well. Maybe there's something they did I didn't notice, but Devin Lloyd almost forced an interception, I think, early on. So another good game from him, from what I saw. He's a great player. He hopefully will be our film breakdown this week, because I don't know who the hell else we can even look at, to be honest. But there's not a whole lot to comment on here. You go to the Bills, it's pretty disgusting. Josh Allen didn't even play the whole game. 4 touchdowns through the air. Somehow only this many rushing yards. But Josh Allen was able to take off over and over. They were just efficient, right? There wasn't a whole lot of... they just went down the field and scored, right? Until the game was pretty much in the bag and they got off the field and they didn't do anything. So maybe it makes these stats look not as good as they were, but the Bills had their way with this team. I'm not shocked at all that even happened. That's kind of your breakdown on the specific players alone. Yeah, it's pretty much mock draft season, Jags. I agree. We're about at that point. We might have to have an emergency mock draft here soon. As much as I don't want to do that, but we're kind of there. I don't see any world where this team turns things around. I mean, you have to buy back the locker room. With this front office and coaching staff, we really believe that's going to happen. But I don't think that's fair to say. Dallas Hutchinson playing pretty freaking good compared to Trayvon Walker. Not a perfect player, but he's having a hell of a season, especially just as a pass rusher. A lot of people would argue he's actually the best one in the NFL right now. Not sure if I'm all the way there, but he's pretty close. Let's see what else we got here. Why do we keep playing man-to-man when it was obvious we don't have the healthy personnel to play that scheme? We had too many injuries. Well, honestly, last week, it didn't really go as poorly as expected. Like, we watched Monteric Brown's film and put that up on the channel. You guys can check that out if you want. One of the notes, though, that I made in that video was, well, he was doing a really good job that game. Brown is not a great athlete. Like, he's not a super fast player. He's not someone who's going to have acceleration to keep up with people. He has to be damn near perfect as a processor. That's the only way he's going to keep up. And the play where he got burned tonight was him not having the athleticism to keep up on the play with Keon Coleman. It's just something you're going to have, but two different results, right? Worked out the last game. He played his ass off, and tonight just didn't have the ability to pull it off. As far as the air players, I didn't really watch a whole lot of Ronald Darby. For some reason, I've barely seen him this year on the field, but obviously he's been involved. He'll be someone I'll have to watch probably on a game replay at some point. I was skeptical about signing Josh Allen to the big deal. I think they should have traded him for draft capital to help this offensive line out, says Nick. I was on board with signing him. My problem was more so that they didn't sign him earlier, because I think that really crippled their ability to deal with Calvin Ridley. And not that I would have even kept Ridley. I would have traded him. I think they could have. I think they could have probably got a third out of him, but Trent Baalke decided to play hardball. And I think with Josh Allen, I still think he's a great player. Like, I don't really have my mind changing on that. I just think that maybe he's not really at the right playing size right now. We mentioned that in the last couple of games where he just looks a little bit bigger, maybe not as fast. But last week, I think he had the best pass rush grade out of almost any player in the NFL. He was great, right? So I'm not going to bury him yet. I don't know if I'll ever bury him, to be fair. But Josh Allen, I don't see him as the problem. I still think he's going to be one of those players you feel fine about giving that deal. Of course, you got to see him produce at that level, and that's a guy who's at least convicted to do it. It isn't just going to, F around during games like we saw from the offensive line, for example, that, would have been nice to have the draft capital to fix them, but I would have done it in other ways, like trading up for Jackson Powers Johnson. Simple stuff like that. Monteric Brown did get put on Keon Coleman's highlight reel. It's true, Nasir. Scout Travis Hunter. He's going to be on our team next year. He might be. Where are we going to pick? I don't know right now, honestly. I think things could be so bad that this team is picking first overall, but I don't know if that's really going to be true. I think the Titans have a very bad team. I think things could really deteriorate even more from where they've been. I could see Jacksonville being in a situation where maybe people get fired at the end of this year. And, sorry, not the end of this year, middle of the year. And maybe someone like Ryan Nielsen steps in and does a better job. Not that Nielsen's been great, but I could see that, where this team maybe wins a couple games and puts himself out of position. But right now, I mean, This is the worst team in the NFL, so you'd have to say first at this moment. And if I was first overall, well, I love a lot of these top players. I would almost trade that pick. I know that's maybe people don't like that, but there's just I think you can get someone really damn good at the top. And if you can move from like 1 to 5 or anything like that, that would be phenomenal. But we'll have to see. We got to know who these prospects really are at the end of the day, and we're only like 4 weeks into the college football season, so we got a lot, a lot more time to scat them all out. Would I keep Cisco around? Now he's had a bad year, and I know like in the mock rebuild I did, which you can check out on my Twitter, I already signed him. I would have already extended him this offseason. Maybe that's a bad decision. It doesn't look good so far. But I would probably want to keep him around. I think he's a good player for this team. I think he's just kind of struggling with a new scheme at this point. And I think for Cisco, I look at the first 3 years. I look at when he's had his good games. It's come against opponents in big moments, right? He's got big plays against Patrick Mahomes, for example. I think he has 2 interceptions on him. He had pick 6 against the Eagles when this team was battling to go 3-1 early in the 2022 season. Like, a lot of those big plays he's had have been in big moments. I think he's been a big moment guy. And so I still like him a lot. And I just think that, yeah, probably wouldn't have worked out as well if you extended him early. So, I'll eat crow on that one. But I think he'll still be someone I'd want to keep around, even if it's just like a 1-year deal sort of thing. He's been a good player for the Jaguars. Well, probably going to wrap it up here in a minute, because I know I've got work in almost 6 hours, so that's going to be fun. But I figured we'd live stream. It's a frustrating night. I figured fans would want to vent about it and talk about it. Be a little bit easier for me to discuss all of this now. We'll check one more time here if grades have come in, which they have not. Yep, they have not. Although for some reason the Antons are showing up. But yeah, frustrating night. This is gonna be a long season. Can't really tell you anything else. I wish I could tell you things were sunshine, rainbows, flowers, and all the good stuff, but they're not. The only thing I can say is, at least with how bad this team is, it's going to force change. Greek Giant says, can we talk about who needs to be fired? Well, right now, I mean, whether it's this week or a couple down the road, Doug, for sure. I don't think there's a debate there. I think depending on how true the Press Taylor stuff is and all the talk about him being butt buddies with Doug, maybe he gets fired too. Maybe you have your quarterbacks coach take over the offense or something of that sort. I think Ryan Nielsen's safe for sure. I would absolutely give him this whole season. I think unfortunately for him, he's just kind of a victim of a really shitty football team and really shitty leadership. I think with Trent Baalke, I would be completely fine firing him now. I think it's important to remember as well that when Dave Caldwell was fired, he was actually fired before Doug Marrone was. I was actually looking at that earlier today. It was after the 1-10 start to the 2020 season. So it's possible. Phil Rauscher should probably be fired too. That's a good one. Jay. I would say they probably start with Doug. Probably, I think that Trent probably goes too. And then maybe Press Taylor sticks around, which is kind of dumb, but I'm not sure they just fire the OC. I could see them being weird about that and keeping him, which would be an awkward situation, in all fairness. But that would be my guess on that. Josh says, parting words before I go to bed. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. I don't know if I could smile about this game necessarily, but it was funny. I'll say that at least. I had a good time laughing at them. But that shouldn't be what we have to watch. Should be able to root for our team and enjoy what they do. But the Jaguars make that hard. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna wrap up here. Once again, thank you to Mr. Dolphin for the membership. If you guys want to join and do memberships, you're more than welcome to. I really appreciate it. Don't have to, of course, but it'd be a great thing to see as this channel grows. We'll be here all year. Talk about the Jaguars. Talk about the future. This is obviously more of an off-season channel. It's been that during time, and so we're always going to have a bit of a focus on that. But we're also in the moment talking about these games and where they're at right now. But I appreciate y'all. Thanks for joining. It was a fun time. Hopefully better things are in the future, even if they aren't this year.